Lavish Titanic honeymooners Victor and Pepita Peñasco weren't even supposed to be on board. They were rounding off a 2-year honeymoon where they stayed in the finest hotels, and Victor bought Pepita the finest jewels. They both came from wealth, with Victor's fortune coming from his grandfather, who was the first minister to King Alfonso XIII, and his father, who was a successful author, and Pepita's family wealth coming from her uncle, who was the premier of Spain. In March 1912, they were staying at Maxim's in Paris, and they started seeing Titanic posters. But Victor's mother had had a premonition that an ocean voyage would bring the couple bad luck and made them promise to never get on a boat. But they blew it off as superstition, and they sent one of their servants to inquire about tickets. They booked a first-class cabin, which cost £108, something like $11,000 today, and a room across the hall for Pepita's maid Fermina. Pepita in particular was enchanted by Titanic. And it didn't take long for the other first-class passengers to notice them. Helen Bishop later said they were just like little canaries. They were so loving and were having such a happy honeymoon that everyone on the Titanic became interested in them. Pepita loved to show off her jewels and extravagant gowns, some of which were designed by fellow passenger Lady Duff Gordon. But there was a language barrier, so they mostly socialized with the first-class passengers from Argentina and Uruguay. On the fateful night of April 14th, Victor and Pepita didn't come back to their room until 11:30, and shortly afterwards felt the bump of the collision. He went upstairs, asked a steward if there was a problem. The steward said no. But he saw that a lot of passengers were gathering on the boat deck, so he decided to be cautious. He went to get Pepita, told her to dress, and while she got dressed, he went to get Fermina. Victor helped Pepita and Fermina onto Lifeboat 8, and assisted another woman who had a child in her arms. And then he was lost in the crowd. And because of the language barrier, Pepita didn't understand that they were prioritizing women and children getting onto the lifeboats, so she didn't understand why Victor had not come with her. At 1:10 a.m., they started lowering the lifeboat, with Pepita and Fermina shouting that they must wait for Victor. There were about 28 people on Lifeboat 8, but only 2 knew how to row. One of them was Noelle, Countess of Rothes, who basically took command of the boat, taught others to use the oars while she took control of the steering. Pepita was beside herself with grief, and eventually the Countess handed over the tiller to her cousin and went to comfort Pepita. But Pepita still saw everything, and later she said, "There was a massive noise as if a mountain were collapsing. When I turned my head, the ship had disappeared as if it had been swallowed down some mysterious throat." The Countess wanted to go back to see if they could save anyone from the waters, but the stewards and the American women on board refused, fearing that the boat would be swamped. After being rescued by Carpathia, Pepita frantically searched for Victor, and unfortunately did not find him among the survivors. Meanwhile, on April 15th, Victor's mother was eating lunch in Madrid. A fly landed in her soup, and she immediately thought something's wrong with Victor. She found out they had checked out of Maxim's in Paris and started phoning every Spanish embassy she could reach. By Tuesday, she found out that Pepita's name was on the survivor list, but Victor's was not. Pepita held on to hope that one of the rescue boats would at least find Victor's body, so she went with her father to Halifax to find out if the Mackie Bennett had recovered his body. Unfortunately, they did not find him. The problem with that was that under Spanish law, if there was no body, a person could not be declared legally dead until 20 years after their disappearance, meaning that Pepita would not be able to remarry or inherit her husband's estate until she was 42. But because of the 2 wealthy families, there was a solution. Some money was swapped, a body was found and identified by Fermina, and a death certificate was issued. And after 6 years of mourning, Pepita remarried the Baron of Rio Tovilla. They had 3 children together, and Fermina continued to work for Pepita until she retired. She lived to be 82 years old. She passed in 1972 and is buried in Madrid.